So, welcome back to the 1760 sessions where we talk to founders building systems that scale their impact. I'm Harry from 1760, and today I'm joined by John Washington, founder of the Innovation Garage, a capability building consultancy that's trained over 2,000 leaders across 100 plus organizations in the last 15 years. John's also become one of the most thoughtful voices on human centered AI, literally writing the checklist to help organizations separate the signal from the snake oil. John, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Harry. Thank you.
Fantastic. So, John, I have to start with the origin story. One of my favorite stories, we covered it last time. Your 10-year-old son literally named your company in crayon on the back of a business card at a family dinner. Take me back to that moment. What was the question your family asked you that started this whole thing, really?
Yeah. So, appreciate the opportunity to connect and talk through and share the story a bit. So, just university background, right? For the folks watching, mechanical engineering and product development is my university background, and so career arc was big company, then small company or startup, big company, small company or startup, and back in probably 2010, 2011, something like that, we started to have just, gatherings at a local restaurant. So it would be my immediate family. I have a wife and three children, and sometimes family members or friends. And the series of conversations kind of started over that period of time. And what I was, trying to tell my sons at the time in particular, they were 10 and 12 at the time, maybe 10 and 13.
Yeah.
What you need to do in life is you have to have something to do that gives you joy, and hopefully that helps others. And we had these conversations, and every few weeks we'd meet up at that restaurant. And at some point in one of those discussions, they flipped the tables on their dad. They said, "Okay, Dad, we hear you, but what are you doing that gives you joy and helps others?" And so, at that time, I was in a large corporation, heading towards, vice president path, right? And I didn't have a good answer to the question. And so, a couple dinners later, this discussion came up about starting a business, and they had their menus, the kids' menus, and they had crayons at the table. And I just asked them a question. Okay, if I was to start something, what might we call it? And through that conversation, they flipped over their menus and they started writing in crayon. And when that we came back to that discussion, I handed the card to my 10-year-old son at the time. I said, "Write the best name on this card." And he wrote Innovation Garage on the back of the business card. Handed it back to me, and I was like, "That's a really cool name." And I grabbed my smartphone and I went over to the U.S. Patent and Trademark site, and right there at the table,
And
I was
then,
like, right then, and I said, "Holy smokes, nobody's ever trademarked that name." And so that was the initial spark, and, that was in 2012 when the business was started, and, since that time, we've worked with, over 100 organizations, 2,000 leaders, and, who knew? So that's really kinda how the evolution happened.
and do you know what? There's a lot of. I'm speaking to a brand director recently and speaking about naming of organizations. And he advised me that you need to have almost like a doing word in the actual organization title. And I literally picture, when I think of Innovation Garage, a project coming to you in the garage and you're there filled with innovation to actually take this project to the next level. And I think it's a really good way of enabling me to picture what you do.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's exactly it. So what, the kind of the origin story, if you will, I had that card handed to me, and I literally flashed back in time to, my father, who was a factory worker, had a series of side businesses, and he had a Texaco service station on the west side of Cleveland, Ohio. So, and I used to go down there when I was a kid. So literally, this card's handed to me. I think about the garage and, kind of time travel backwards to going down to my dad's service station and just watching what they did, right? So that was kind of the philosophy, and that's how the sparks were created, right? A car came in, It needed some work. The technicians,
Yeah.
did some problem solving, and then they moved, they figured out what was wrong, they fixed it, and they allowed that customer to go to their next destination. And so all of that kind of came kind of rushing back at that moment. And I was like, boy, this seems like something cool to do. And
Yeah.
if I'm gonna do it, I should really walk the talk. So that's really kind of what the evolution was. And got a super supportive wife that just, said that seems like something that would you'd have some natural energy around, some
Yeah.
intrinsic
Yeah.
motivation. And so that's how that all came together.
And that kind of leads me into my next question. How happier have you been from leaving, say, a large organization to starting your own thing? What's the difference in feeling?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference in the feeling, I guess, is that you own your own time, right? And it's not to discount, working for others. And I did a lot of that and learned a lot and worked with great people. But what became kind of obvious to me, because a lot of kind of my cohort within the organization, they were all getting to a certain age, and we were all having these peripheral discussions around, what do we want to do when we grow up,
Yeah.
right? And it just became obvious to me that for me, um, I needed to create something in which it drew on my technical background and my experiences, because I really didn't want to give that up. You start to move into an executive path. Um, you get a staff. You're leading people, right? And you start to, at least my view of that was, I was going to lose technical skills. And I liked all of that. I liked the diversity of creating things. I liked the diversity of doing deals. I like, all of that. I like the project management. I like the program management. It just became obvious to me anyway that
You like the
the
big
only
picture.
way that it was going to happen is if the only way I get the environment that I wanted was if I created it.
I love that. And it's the big picture of working in your organization. And I've worked in, I think I may have used this term before, in some big companies, and we call it a sausage factory because it's one in, one out, basically. And some of my startup experience is what I've enjoyed the most, not only doing the sales part of things, but doing marketing and helping clients come on board from the very first touch point, which could be that article or event, all the way to um, them meeting me and closing and signing, for example. But then what I've enjoyed about going a step further with 1760 is it's not only about that beginning funnel, it's about the end funnel and client delivery at the same time and being hands-on in the projects with my clients. And I find it so much more satisfying.
Yeah, I think that that's a lot of it, is really what you're trying to do is when you meet folks, they have a problem to solve, and you want to help them solve that problem, right?
Yeah.
Get them to a different place. And I think that's a big bit. I mean, some of the most fun I've ever had in my career was when we weren't exactly sure how we were going to do what we were going to do, and we had no money, zero money, right? So that really forces you to think about how you can build something with just what's around you, and you have to be very aware of, we've got everything that we need to do what we need to do. We just need to put the pieces together in a right way to make it happen. And that's part of the spirit of this, is to encourage people that I really believe this, that everyone's got a color palette of skills. The trick is, how do you put that jigsaw puzzle together to provide value to others, right? And so if you land in that area and you kind of figure out that formula for yourself, it's a really great kind of lifestyle. And playing it back, there's just been so many more people that have gotten to meet, so many more connections. I mean, candidly, we wouldn't have this conversation without some of those decisions. So I've always been someone that's kind of thought about how do dots connect, and how does this meeting turn into something else in the future. And I was just yesterday talking to someone that I hadn't spoken to in probably 6 or 7 years, because we had a opportunity to go solve a problem, and they had the skill set. So it's just really neat how those dots connect. And so I think you only get that when you've got some mileage behind you, right? You can't really look back in the mirror if you're, 19 years old. You don't have that amount of highway behind you, and you need a little bit more to kind of see how
You
you
need more
connect the
experience
dots.
to work out what, not just connect the dots, it's work out what you like and don't like fundamentally. It's
Yeah.
you'd
Yeah.
have nothing to compare it to otherwise.
Yeah, exactly, and you've gotta have different experiences and positive ones and negative ones, and it's a whole discovery process, and so I think every engagement, you kinda learn something that helps you at a future point in time, and I think that's part of the bit that, you have to figure out, and it happens at different ages with different people. Someone super young, they really got an ability to kinda see where they wanna go. Other people need a longer period of time to, figure that bit out and architect something. I mean, and I think it's very organic too. You can't say that, you're going to be a startup guru at the age of 20. Some folks are, but I think some people need to have these other experiences and figure this kind of thing out that works for them. But ultimately, it kind of comes down to, for me, it was stepping out in faith and then walking the talk and just seeing what could happen. That's really what it all was. It's like,
That's
that's an
risky.
adventure. That's an
Yeah, it's risky,
adventure.
but it's an adventure at the same time.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you're quite a few years in now, and when your kid would now turn around to you and say, "Dad, are you providing joy and helping others?" What's your answer to them?
Every day.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's the
And
answer.
it's manifested in their lives too. I mean, they've really got, it's provided value in the, just I was able to bring them in when they were young, teach them some things, and they're on their own career path right now, but they still come back and support projects,
Yeah, of course.
and the ability to work with them has just been awesome. It's like the greatest blessing that I could
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
communicate to anybody.
Do you know what? And I can feel that because I had a moment. My late father, he also, when I used to work in, as you know, I worked in SaaS, in software as a service sales, and he too worked in that environment. And I remember there was a moment we were away on holiday and we were talking about it, and I could feel his whole demeanor changing and shifting towards me. Instead of treating me as his son, I was more seen on level playing fields because we were talking about work in the same environment, and it was an amazing feeling between us. It wasn't just like, oh, what's the score in the football, or just something like how we'd previously had a relationship. It was, we were two men on a level, and it really, really was a beautiful moment. So I can imagine I can only imagine what that's like working with your sons here and there on projects.
Yeah, it's the best. I mean, they're really great, great thinkers, and I also just like the fresh perspectives because
Yeah,
candidly, they don't have the baggage that us older folks do, right? So they don't have the thinking blocks that we might, and I love
yeah.
the perspectives, and we've been able to build out a nice, bench of independent consultants and contractors, and everyone that comes to these opportunities is highly motivated to deliver value, and that's in some cases a different contrast than working for someone. So to me, it just makes a lot of sense, and it can be very agile and scalable in that way.
Yeah, I forgot how much I enjoy talking about this topic, considering this is the world I'm in now. So
Yeah.
let's lead into your business, though, before I get carried away. You've trained 2,000 leaders, as I mentioned earlier, 100 plus organizations, but you don't do cookie cutter programs. You build tailored curricula for each client based on their team maturity and challenges. So can you walk me through that? How do you assess a new client and design their program?
Yeah, so, and again, that process has kind of been evolution, right? So what we look for in a discussion with a potential client and their team, right? The ideal trigger for us is there's a leadership team member that recognizes they want to do X, and maybe they recognize that maybe they don't have the skills internally to do whatever that thing is. And so that's kind of the discussion we're looking for from senior leaders. Like, hey, we want to build a capability in this area. And so what we do is we kind of talk to them about the overarching strategy of what they want to accomplish. And ideally, we can wrap that around a business problem to solve, something that's real in their business. And then we've got a curriculum library of skills, and then we'll design a education program that upskills the team and hopefully applicable and helps to either move that business challenge forward to the next level, or sometimes it solves it right there. And that's from a consulting perspective. We do a lot of change management work. I think that's what sets our approach apart from others, is that the idea is that we're going to train ourselves out of the job, right? So we're going to fire ourselves. That's kind of the spirit of it.
Yeah,
And
that's amazing. You do so much a good job that basically there's no need for you anymore. So you're going to fire yourself out of the role. Is that what you mean by that?
yeah, exactly. I mean, that they realize and build up their capability, and they can solve those challenges that they couldn't do before.
Yeah,
Now, you know, we've got engagements with client relationships that are 8, 9, 10 years old, because they still come back because there's something else to solve, or
yeah.
some other area that we can provide value. So the verticals are strategy, innovation, and supply chain. And then there's project and program management, product design support, thinking about design for manufacture, design for assembly, those types of things. Really, from the ideation all the way to the supply chain build out, we can play in all those places.
Amazing. So can you give me an example of a recent project that's been a big success, and talk me through how the assessment process, how manual is it, and how long does the custom design take?
Yeah. So, I mean, what I can kind of talk about some generalities
Yeah.
that were interesting because they had a collaborative element to them that no one would have expected. Um, as far as the assessment process, it's a pretty kind of classic, process from a consulting perspective. So obviously, having those leadership conversations, understanding the gaps. Then there's a skills and maturity level assessment for the organization. So, if the topic is innovation, what's their mindset around innovation, kind of their growth mindset, what they're thinking from a growth perspective. So there's an individual assessment and then an organizational assessment. And we're looking at just kind of a strengths based thinking style at an individual level. And that can help us identify how teams can be structured. And then once we kind of get those assessments back, then we'll work on the curriculum design. And an engagement can last, 3 months to, we've had some go 48 months, depending on the size of the organization and how many people. But, to the point of like some things that really resonate in the experience of things like that. A publicly traded energy company wanted to build innovation capability. And what was really unique about that is they brought in a new executive that was completely outside of that energy industry, and they wanted some diverse thinking. And so that's kind of what was, the push, if you will. That was the momentum push to start to build a program. And it was innovation and growth mindset deployment, and they walked through different levels of the education, generating ideas, products concepts, service concepts.
Yeah.
um, and in one interesting spin, they had a relationship with a hospital network, and we had teams of folks that worked in the energy industry and the hospital industry working on a consumer product application. So, you've got energy folks working on something in the medical space, and that manifested into, the one organization's first time they had a granted patent in over 20 years, and, various trademarks and intellectual property. And so that's kind of what you're looking for, is leaders that want to do something different and
Okay.
find a problem to solve, and educate the team up and work them through. So it was just, one of those collaborations in which, if you just said that's what's going to happen at the end of it, people would have told you you were absolutely crazy. But
Yeah.
that's what happened.
And how do you identify those leaders who or organizations that are potentially wanting to change or do something a little differently?
Yeah, I mean, so part of it's kind of classic outreach, right? So are folks aware of what we do, the value delivery that we can provide? There's a big component of it that's actually referral based. That we
Yeah.
work with an organization. We do some good work there. They introduce us to some folks, so it's kind of a classic, um, you know, um, market survey, right? So a user experience survey, right? Are they a net promoter? And what happens is they make introductions and things for other opportunities in different industries. And so there's a bit of that net promoter bit that, those folks had a good experience. They're a 9 or a 10 on the net promoter scale, and they become an advocate, and engagements come around in that fashion. Um,
Okay.
so, so that's, a bit of it, but there's the classic outreach. People find us on the internet. People read a blog post. We had one client. We worked with the Department of Defense, and they were reading blog posts for over 2 years. And we got a notice. Hey, I was reading these for 2 years, and finally thought we should reach out to you guys. So
Amazing.
so
Those are the
you
best.
don't
Those are the
really.
best clients as well.
Yeah, you don't really know where it's going to come from. So I think you got to kind of, again, back to that connecting dots thing. Have multiple avenues to kind of understand what's going to come into the pipeline and how you build it out.
So when that new client does come in, are you starting from scratch each time? Do you have frameworks you adapt? What does the design process look like week to week?
Yeah. So, when we think about frameworks, we aren't, um, on a specific framework is the perfect one because there's lots of them out there. So we've got capability to take, some of Lean, some of Six Sigma, some of design thinking, and then build out a program that helps with kind of those standard methodologies, but customize it and make it flexible for what the client needs. So we draw from all kinds of different
Oh, yeah.
places as far as content. So it's very agnostic as far as what comes in as
It's
far
on
as
the
content.
bounce. It feels like it's just you ebb and flow with whatever the client is, whoever they've come in for, however big the task, and it always relates back to connecting the dots.
It does, and I think a lot of it, for folks that are gonna do, work no matter what the space is, it's really, really trying to listen truly to what it is. The client may be saying something, and you have to kinda mirror the language and translate that back, and then is this kinda helping you with the end state? We always like to, start with the end state and work backwards, right? So picture yourself a year from now, picture yourself 24 months from now. What does it look like? What does it feel like? And that really helps us kind of inform how we
Yeah.
would design a program.
And you mentioned before, which I find fascinating, is you mentioned running a lean and motivated freelancers rather than full-time staff. And I know you and I spoke largely about the motivation behind working for yourself, and that could be one of the benefits of hiring a freelancer. So how do you actually coordinate that network when you've got, say, multiple clients running simultaneously? How do you match the right freelancers with the right engagements?
Yeah. So, I mean, part of it is intentional in the design that what I've found is that a lot of the clients want to make sure that the founder is still in the mix, right? So that's a big piece. And so our capacity is constrained in a way with that, but it's very different than, the big consulting model of there's a large chase team, they chase the engagement, they secure the engagement, and then junior people show up that no one in the contracting process or the
Yeah.
sales process ever met before. And so I think that's a really important piece. And it's just making sure that are we providing value, if we've got three engagements going at the same time,
Balance it all, yeah.
are those folks, seeing the people that they need to see? And are we, delivering the value that we want to, right? So there's a bit of that people really like, when the phone rings, do they know the person that's picking it up? There's that human, centered bit that I think is very important for sure.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it just makes such a difference having the same person at the point of contact from front to finish. Even with clients we've brought on board, I've had people say to me, Harry, are you going to be with me in the next step of the journey, or are you just leaving? And I said, our organization isn't big enough for me to leave you, so you're stuck with. So, what system are you using for keeping everyone aligned? Are you using Slack, email, project management tools, or are you just a very good juggler?
I am a good juggler, but we do like to build some tools around that. I mean, it's classic things like Trello boards and
Yeah, of course.
um we've got frameworks that, you can bring tech to scale things if you need to. Some collaboration tools, collaboration boards. So we're not, again, really locked into one kind of format. I mean, and I found too that especially as we're doing deployments with teams, and maybe they don't have knowledge of kind of standard work tools. Let's start with spreadsheet with some tabs. Let's just start with that,
That's
and
good.
and
Back to
then
basics.
yeah, something super simple like that, and then as the client evaluates technology to scale their processes, there's just so many choices that you can plug in, and
There's
it's
no
really
one.
trying.
I think what I'm learning from you, John, is there's just no one size fits all. And it's like there's a lot of different things you can do to suit your clients and suit your own processes. Um, there's one subject I did really want to touch on while we've got time, and that is the snake oil stance. Uh, you knew this was coming.
Yeah.
Let's talk about your AI perspective. You've written extensively calling out AI as snake oil, but you've also then gone and created a 10-point checklist for organizations to evaluate whether AI is actually useful or just hype. What made you take such a public stance is what I want to know. And what were you seeing that potentially frustrated you?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily frustration. I think the input was we had a client team, a large client order team that works in the education space, reach out to us about, and this goes back to, my goodness, probably I'm trying to think. ChatGPT rolled around about November of 22, and it became more public, I think, in the early part of 2023. And not long after that, so this is December or January of 23, we had a client team reach out to us and say, "What is this thing called AI?" And, um, so if you could kind of think about the evolution of ChatGPT in particular, right? People were getting their free subscriptions and starting to use it, and this big, Um, it was the start of, you could call it a hype cycle, or you could call it the start of the early part of the discovery curve, right? So there's these early adopters there. And we created a program, and we delivered it to some client teams, and these were executive leaders. And what I started to notice, this was just, observing in these sessions, the thing that tripped in the back of my brain was, this feels like a lot of people are outsourcing their critical thinking to these tools.
Okay.
Okay. And so that was a bit of a concern. I mean, I've been in the industry for over 30 years, and for the younger viewers, right? I mean, I was around when voicemail started. I was around when computer aided design started, right? I mean, I learned on drafting boards, right? Pen and paper. So I got to see all these technologies come around when email came out,
Yeah.
corporations and access to internet, smartphones, social media, right? So it was just kind of looking at the historical cycles and trends of those things, and then watching really competent leaders, you know, say things about, well, ChatGPT knows me really well. It's a good life coach. It gives me good guidance. I was like, wow, these are interesting, you know, psychological factors. And so it was just very interesting to kind of see this. And so the snake oil thing, that's not my term. There's a really
Yeah.
good book out there, called AI Snake Oil. But it was this tension of, is this a technical savior for people, or is it snake oil, right? And so you've got to be really careful about how you look at the AI based tools. And as we've seen, there's so many of them now, right? With under 3 years, there's just so many choices. And what happens is, with a lot of them, it's that classic model: give it for free, put your information in there, then there'll be a subscription tier, and wait a minute, now there's embedded advertisements, right? So it's just followed a very classic model, and so ultimately, having human-centered processes, we're big believers in analog things first, right? So if we talk about creativity, how do we do that with pen and paper, right? What would we do if we don't have the tech tools? And then you insert those tech tools to kind of help support your strategy. And, we've seen some interesting things, man, intellectual property, trademark information, things that were guarded as organizational secrets getting pushed into those publicly available tools. And so that was kind of how the checklist evolved was, you have a good strategy, understand the human centered bit. Are your processes, could you run your processes without AI? And then go down there and explore those paths and be very careful because lots of people were just getting mandated statements of we've got to be on AI, but nobody really knew what was under the hood, what it does,
Oh
how it
yeah.
works. So
Half the people don't even know it's open source. It's crazy. One thing that yeah, sorry.
no, go ahead, go ahead.
So one thing that just really resonated with me there is leaders in a boardroom using AI for their critical thinking. AI is informing their ideas, and it shouldn't be that way. It should be you. We're a firm believer here is it's not so much about what you're getting out of AI; it's about what you put into AI to get out of it, and it should be the idea before the AI idea. That is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, and you're exactly right. So that's the human centered bit, right?
Yeah,
I found a lot of the tools to be very powerful. I mean, internet search is a great one, right? Give me these specifications and 5 suppliers and give me links,
yeah.
right? For that, right? It's really good and time saving. And so I think if anyone has kind of these analog skills of creativity and critical thinking, what we advocate is look, do that individual work first, then go to the AI tool to because it might help you take you to a different place. Or it may take you down a rabbit hole that you didn't think you should be on. So it's really good to kind of have that critical thinking foundation before you go there. And I think too, organizations are going to need this human centered connection. I think we're going to come to a point where people just want to talk to somebody. I think that's kind of how we look at it with the evolution, as we talked about earlier,
It's. I
evolution
always
of
find
yeah,
it's the small things that you don't usually talk to someone about. You make the decision yourself. People are leaning on AI for the decision. It's like I have a slight roadblock in my head about making the next decision, whether it's going to be going online and picking somewhere where I'm going to order my next takeaway from. But you're
yeah,
asking AI, what would you recommend in this area?
yeah,
And it's like it's just that tiny infliction. That's why I love this human centered piece, and that's something that 1760 we have been doing with all of our clients. It's letting them know that this isn't the outcome isn't about what AI is doing for you. You're not going to replace any tasks. It's about what you put into it. Um, so, last question on AI: what would will AI look like for you without the snake oil? If you could wave a magic wand and automate one part of your business tomorrow, what would it be? Do you think?
Well, I think ultimately, if we think about just any organization, right, does it help them manage their institutional knowledge in an effective way? And I think that's a really valuable bit as far as AI, right? So, one of the observations I've just had kind of looking at, we talked about evolution of, the internet and smartphones and social media is that um, there's a lot of knowledge from past history that is getting erased off the internet, right? And organizational knowledge is getting erased too, with just we're going to jump into the tech tools and not worry about that stuff in the past. So I think that's really important to kind of have that organizational memory somewhere such that, hey, we were in this situation. What did we do there? We don't rightly remember. That's a great thing to ask an AI agent, right? But it's containered. It's your organization. It's your intellectual property. It's your things. You use the agents to help you with that stuff, and that's kind of where I see the biggest value of it. Is it you need to have some analog skills that we've talked about, creativity and problem solving and project management. Just how would you do that if you didn't have it? But if we want to retain our organizational knowledge or organizational memory, I think that that's a good, way to kind of lever those AI-based tools. And intellectual property is another one that you get, trademarks, all those things. I think those are all really important, to retain as you move through.
So I had a couple more questions to ask you. The first one, the burning one, is what was the restaurant you ate at to find the Innovation Garage? Because I need to go eat up there myself to get some inspiration.
Yeah, that's a local sports pub called Jersey's, so it's about 2
Amazing.
miles from here. Yeah,
Okay, jerseys. I'm gonna have a look. I'm gonna look it up
yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah,
And
when you're in
last,
the States, I'm happy to take you, so no stress.
so the last question is that you deliberately have kept the business lean to avoid scaling pitfalls and operational rigidity, but you've also done an incredible job, training leaders. And looking ahead in the next 3 to 5 years, what does scale done right look like for the Innovation Garage?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's, just providing value to our clients, right? And I think that the stories from the clients themselves are the ones that we look for, right? One of the great things about doing what we've been doing for so long, I'll get, a LinkedIn message or a random email from someone that 5 years ago we talked this skill. I'm still using it today. Those kind of stories. I mean, we're not really, measured in the context of maybe traditional business ROI and things like that, or the amount of revenue. It's really, I think what happens is if you provide value to others, the revenue will be there. People will recognize the value. And, there's a bit of not wanting to, I don't want to, I'll say it this way, but not create your own prison in that what you've scaled becomes something that you can't pivot around or shape in a different way. So I really like the organic nature of all of that. And I always just kind of think of it like, waves on the ocean, right? So I'm gonna catch that one. I'm gonna let that one pass. We'll get on this one. I really like the organic nature of it.
And you know what? That's almost a way that I've lived my entire life, and I've enjoyed doing it because I've never not enjoyed the life that I'm living. But look, I've really enjoyed today's discussion, from your origin story, where you got to where you are, and the outlook of Innovation Garage, how you operate, and the future. And I love the analogy of catching the right wave, and it's either the right wave, or you let some go, or it could be the right wave, the right time, half the time. So,
Yeah.
John, thank you so much for joining. That was awesome. And I probably would love to get you back on at some point.
Yeah, more than welcome to, Harry, and appreciate the opportunity and wishing you ultimate success on your adventure.
Thank you. I will share in the website link for Innovation Garage below. Cheers, John.
All right, sir. Thanks.